Okay, we are live.
Good morning. This is Senate Judiciary. It is April 11th, 2023. And we are taking up first H35 and activating the Victims Assistance Program. Very complicated bill that Michelle will walk us through first, and then we'll have comments from John Campbell and Jennifer Bowman of the Center for Crime Victim Services.
So good morning. For the record, Michelle Child's Office of Legislative Counsel, and we're looking at H35 is passed by the House. And as Senator Sears said, it's a pretty short bill, and I'll give you a quick walkthrough, but the language is part of an agreement between your two witnesses today. So I'll kick kind of questions about why and those sort of things to them, if that's okay. But I can address the language. So first section in section 1 is amending the Victim Assistance Program in Title 13. And so this section changes the responsibility for maintaining the Victims Assistance Program from the Center for Crime Victim Services to the Department of State's Attorneys and Sheriffs. And I think they can give you, I think Senator Sears knows, but they can give you the background about the funding and what's happened with that. There's also a small change to the title. You'll see, and there from Victim Assistance Program to Victim Advocate Program. And then when you look at the things that the victim advocates do, there's some very small changes to the language there that they said better reflects currently those services that are provided. And then we're moving on to section 2. And this section addresses the authority for state's attorneys to hire victim advocates. And then section 3 is just the bill takes effect on passage.
This seems like a simple little bill.
It really is. Senator Sheen.
So I thought that actually this might be a question for the state's attorney's office. So I'll just wait until John,
Okay.
But yeah, thank you.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm here just in case I can be helpful.
John Campbell.
Thank you, Senator. John Campbell, the Executive Director of the State's Attorneys and Sheriffs. Thank you for having us here. As we've all said, one thing we never like to say is a simple little bill, but this is as close as you can get to it. It really is housekeeping. As you may recall, the state accepted the funding for the Victims Advocates Program. They took that over from the Center for Crime Victim Services with the instead of the federal grant, we're now getting a general appropriation from the state. So this program, which has always been the Victims Advocates have always been with the state's attorneys, individual offices, but all the funding mechanism was through the Crime Victim Services. So with that change, this statute needed to be changed as well to reflect that. There was, while we were there, because we would have to make some of these changes, there were a few things, as Michelle said, that did not reflect what the current practice is, and that one is in transporting is needed to court proceedings due to liability issues and a few other matters. The victims advocates do not transport the victims to either the courts or to any type of counseling that they may be getting. So that's all done. The victims arrange for themselves, and that's it.
Oh, okay. Any questions? Senator Sheen.
Just a quick question, John. So I'm looking at section 2, and so state's attorneys do currently have victim advocates, right?
That's correct.
So can you just run it by me one more time? That what exactly does section 2 do?
Let me look at section 2. In essence, what this is saying is that the victims advocates, it's recognizing the fact that the victims advocate program is run through the Department of State's Attorneys and not through the Center for Crime Victim Services. I think Jen would probably be able to answer that question better because she was running the program and the center was running the program. So if I could ask you to maybe, if I could defer that question to Jen.
Senator Ruth.
Morning, John.
Morning, Senator. How are you?
I'm just wondering on page 3, part of the struck language involves the possibility of collective bargaining. Is that current reality? Is there a union? Is there collective bargaining?
The reason why that is out is because they are already organized, and so they are organized state employees under VSEA.
Okay, so what this involves, it seems like, is the ability to terminate their services. So state's attorneys are authorized to hire them, and then it looks like currently they can terminate them at their pleasure unless otherwise modified. So by striking this language, do we change the ability of them to be hired or fired?
Yeah, exactly, and to the better, I think. Previous to this, the victims advocates, when they were not organized, they could be fired. They were there at the pleasure, served at the pleasure of the state's attorney. Now they have all the collective bargaining protections. So if there's a problem, they have to go through the same process that we would go through with any state employee that's comes under the VSEA contract. So it gives them added protections.
Thank you.
Any other questions for John? John, thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll stand by.
Jen, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you very much. For the record, my name is Jennifer Pullman. I'm the Executive Director of the Vermont Center for Crime Victim Services, and I appreciate the committee taking up this bill. Again, I hesitate to use the term simple bill because that's always come back to haunt me, but this is a reflection of consensus language that we worked on during the op session with the department to reflect the fact that funding has changed and the funding follows the positions, which makes a lot of sense, in terms of organizational capacity. The center has had coordinated the program for about 35, 36 years and was able to use federal and special funds to grow that program from literally, I think, 12 advocates to currently 27. I was the coordinator back from 2002 to 2009. So I care about this program greatly, and I know that the work that the advocates do. But unfortunately, we got to a place with the fact that special funds have been declining and federal funds have been very volatile. And we came to legislature last year to say we really can't rely for funding for state positions. We can't rely on federal and special funds anymore. These positions are core positions. They need to be supported. And the legislature decided to, in fact, pick up these positions through general fund dollars, which was incredibly important, but made the decision to carry those through or put that through the Department of State's attorneys and sheriffs, which again makes sense in terms of the fact that the dollars should follow the positions. They've always been state positions. It was just a different way of funding them at the time that became a way that we couldn't do that anymore. I think what the department and I worked on was realizing that we needed to clean this provision up, because from the center's perspective, if we don't have any authority over their positions and if we're not funding them, we should not be in the green books, let's say, as far as having that responsibility. So work with John, work with other members of his department to think about how we change this particular provision. And it makes a lot of sense for us. And I think that, the pieces that John referred to in terms of the services that advocates provide, absolutely, we agree with the language that's in proposed on page 2 and sub 3 with respect to services, changing those pieces, and especially the transportation piece, we think we agree with. And as far as the piece on page 3, I can't really speak to that. That was raised in terms of the what that means for advocates. I do know that advocates do have, are under a collective bargaining agreement. I do understand that this language actually came from Annie Noonan, and that it was simply cleaning up this piece to reflect what is actually the case in fact and case in point. And so for us, we're okay with the language, but I don't know that I can flesh that out any further than what John had said, because this was a department proposal and we understand that it's not going to change practice for advocates.
Okay. Any questions? John?
Senator, if I could get back, because I did just clarify was off camera for a second, Senator Hashim, the language there is actually to reflect that as part of the collective bargaining agreement, and also the description, the job descriptions for the victims advocates. That's what that reflects there in that language. So and that's in section 2.
Thank you.
Senator Baruch.
Jennifer, just a quick question for you. On page 2, we're striking transportation as needed to court proceedings. Has there ever been transportation provided, or has that always been a dead letter?
I think it's never been in mine. I mean, when this went through, I was probably only 15, so I don't know that, but I know in working with the advocates, as I have in the past, and that's not something that they do. And I think from a liability perspective, we wouldn't want advocates transporting individuals. I know our compensation program does provide support, referrals, reimbursement for victims in terms of transportation. So that is a resource. And to the extent that advocates know our program really well, I know that they're referring them to us for those kinds of options. But I certainly would never want to think of an advocate providing transportation, and I've never heard of it.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for either John or Jen? Jen, you wrote me an email about meeting on the budget for the Center for Crime Victim Services.
Yeah.
I have some time Thursday at lunchtime. How's
Okay.
12:45? Does 12:45 work for you, either in person or Zoom?
I can make that work, Senator. Thank you.
Calendar's not working. I do. There we go. All right. Okay. I don't see this as being complex. I think we should I would have put it into the miscellaneous bill. Quite frankly, it really is housekeeping. So, and I don't see any need for changes.
Looks fine to me.
So, is there a motion to report favorably H35? Senator Baruch moves that we report H35 favorably. Is there any further discussion, any comments? This means it goes to the governor the way it is, assuming it passes the Senate without. Okay, Peggy, could you please call the roll?
Senator Baruch,
Yes.
Senator Norris,
Yes.
Senator Bihowski. Yes. Senator Hashim.
Yes.
Senator Sears.
Yes. Who'd like to report this complex piece of business? Senator Norris.
It's got Bob Norris written all over it.
Dude.
It wouldn't be bad to talk a little bit about what a victim's advocate does, because Jen or John, if you could just give a few examples for Senator Norris when he reports the bill. I think a lot of people are unaware of the role of the victim's advocate.
You could just send me something via email, John, when you get an opportunity. This won't be till like next week, I assume, so.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I'll send you something over.
Well, it could be the end of this Friday, Thursday, Friday.
It'll be the end of this week.
I will get it out to you over the next day or so. As I like to make sure you have it by Friday.
That
Well,
sounds
it'll be
great.
Thursday, Friday.
Okay, I'll have it to you tomorrow. How's that?
Sounds
And
good.
I'm happy to help John in any way I can.
Good, because it's,
I really think the Senate, it's a simple bill, but I've found more constituents and even senators ask and representatives ask me, well, what about this, victim? What can we do? And I refer them to the victim's advocate. They weren't even aware of that.
And the victims' compensation.
Right. And that's the Center for Crime Victim Services.
Yeah, feel free, Jen, to chime in with Mr. Campbell, Director Campbell's email.
All right, John and I will work together and get you something that seems a little bit more interesting for the floor than our simple little bill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Doesn't say anything about.
Do you,
I appreciate that.
we're gonna discuss in about 10 minutes. I think we'll take a 5 or 10 minute pause, but Michelle's here. If we can start H41 a little earlier than it's, to do our markup and possible vote. That's the bill that deals with referral of domestic and sexual violence cases to community justice centers. And if we could make sure that, Peggy, that
I'll let everybody know.
let everybody know we're gonna start at 10:30. I think some are here already.
Yep.